Thank you very much. As a beginning, I hope you will forgive my voice, which is absolutely terrible today. I think I am fighting against a very little virus, but stronger than me. And it's not a scientific experimentation, unfortunately. Challenges in science teaching and national strategic plans for science education. Are linked questions, of course, but two different questions. In France, the national strategic plans is the job of the minister, of course. And you've heard this morning how minister about mathematics plan, for example. I don't know today what are the next scientific plan in France. So I can't really speak about that. But what I am going to do with you is try to know how we can think in France about the future of scientific education, about the evolution of scientific education. Not really the results of the reflection, but the methods of the reflection about this subject. To address this issue, I think that we have to ask three main questions. Three very important questions. Why should science be taught? It's a question of the goals of scientific teaching. To whom science be taught, should science be taught? The question of audience and the linked question of contents of education. And how to teach science is the question of pedagogical methods. Well, I will try to say you a few words about each of these three questions. So, the first question, why should science be taught? Is it useful to teach science? If the answer is no, it's very simple. We are on holiday altogether. But if we think it's useful, it's because three different reasons. The first reason is because it's a pleasure. It's fun, as said someone. It's a pleasure to know how the world is made and how the world works. It's the cultural answer or the cultural reason for scientific teaching. The second reason is because it's a necessity in an increasingly scientific and technological world for two different reasons. For the daily life reason, because each pupil lives in a world where daily life is influenced by scientific subjects. And because some pupils will get a job which is a scientific or technological job. So it's what I call the practical reason. And the third reason, it's because science teaching develops rigorous, cautious, critical, enlightened minds, and it's useful to make citizens. It's the issue of citizenship. The question is the citizen reason, if you want. Well, you know, in fact, in France, when you speak about scientific teaching, very often the question is, what is the reason we have to choose And obviously, in my opinion, the important is that we must not choose. We have three different reasons to teach science. And of course, these three questions are quite the same question about school in general. How does school exist? Because we have to form happy, cultivated men inserted into society. Well, my second question is, to whom is science taught? It's a question of audience and the lead question of contents. Of course, after my first point, it's obvious that we have to teach science to everyone, to all pupils, but for different purposes. To develop a common culture, it was the cultural answer. To make everyone a responsible citizen in a scientific and technological world, and to prepare some pupils for scientific and technological jobs. We have three purposes. And so, we have to teach science to all children of a generation. It's quite new, you know. Just imagine, we are in 1950. The teacher of science goes into the classroom. He sees pupils who are a little part of the generation. They are what we can call an elite, a passionate elite. It's very easy to attract their attention. Today, the teacher has in front of him all the generation. Well, second point, we have to teach science to children who bathe in a flood of information. Just imagine, we are in 1950. The teacher, with his little passionate elite in front of him, is going to teach a subject which is always new for the pupil. He speaks about a new subject to passionate pupils. It's very easy to attract the attention. Well, what I mean is, today, it's not so easy to be a teacher of science. And third point, we have to teach to children living in a complex world. That is to say, in a world where the comprehension of the world is possible only if you link several approaches. And I will speak about that. So, we have to speak science to all pupils and not only a passionate elite. So, some consequences. As you know, scientific contents useful to all and to everyone. It's difficult to the conception of curricula is very difficult. We have to reconcile useful science and fun science. Again, we need not to choose. We have to teach subject that students think they know. And we have to find a way to attract their attention. And we have to teach scientific knowledge correlated between several parts of science and also with other kind of knowledge. Well, all what I say shows that it's not so easy to choose contents for science teaching to all the pupils of a generation. My third question is how to teach. It's a question of method. Well, you can teach science by dogmatic course. The teacher says, science says that. Trust me. It's not a good method to attract the attention, and it's not a good method to shape the mind. So, second solution, you can make a lecture. In a lecture, the teacher explains science. It's not the same thing as dogmatic course. It's really different. There is arguments. But the pupils is always spectator of the teaching. And you can try to use one kind of active pedagogy. The pupils is involved in the construction of his own scientific knowledge. So, if you practice such a pedagogy, you can both transmit knowledge and shape the mind. That's why we prefer, of course, this solution. As Pierre-Léna said this morning, it's not really a new idea. I think even Socrates had the idea with the meiotic. Some steps in the history of this active pedagogy. Rousseau, it's not a question of teaching him the sciences, but of giving him a taste of loving them and of method of learning them when this taste is better developed. You know, Bachelard, the teaching of the results of science is never a scientific teaching. It's quite strong. So we used different words about this pedagogy. Rediscovery, problem-based teaching, inquiry-based science education, and so on. But I think we have to see that when you use a new word, there are always what I call collateral damages. For example, if you use rediscovery, if you mean the pupil try to understand how has been constructed the knowledge, so that's good. But if you mean, and if the teacher understands the pupils as to rediscovered in 1 hour all the conclusion of 10 generations of Nobel Prizes, you see, it's a little bit dangerous. So, there is another manner to see this question is the institutional implementation. We have tried to introduce active pedagogy since a long time. Some steps are here. In 1968, for example, in introduction of problem-based teaching in biology and so on, la main à la pâte, the plan of the renovation of science and technology, integrated science and technology, and so on. Well, it's always very difficult to make a reality with this kind of pedagogy. But what I am happy to tell you today is in France, we have a lot of difficulties about that, but we have also a chance. And the chance and the fruitful dialogue between institutions and partners. And among the partners, obviously, the Académie des Sciences, l'Académie des Sciences in France, of course, who helped us very much. Thank you for attention.